Hi there, I'm Mike from ATB Guitars, and this is Questions and Answers with Mike number 14. Irish Bog on YouTube asks, I've heard that dealers are starting to not deal with vintage Fenders. Too many fakes. They only sell Gibsons. Any comments? Yep. Well, we are. There are a lot of fakes out there, that is for sure, but they're usually pretty easy to spot. The ones which are difficult to spot, then yes, we tend to sort of, if we're in doubt, we'll sort of decide cautiously rather than jump in there. But it is very rare that you can find a fake these days that is going to be exactly the same as an original. Even some of the guitars, which I know are made in Spain by someone who's very, very skilled, they're sort of relatively easy to identify. And there's others out there like this, but you can usually use all your senses to determine if a guitar is original or not, and also the finish as well. You can use a lot of your senses. It's sight, it's smell, it's to some extent the sound, but when you've handled hundreds of these, then you get a feel for what is right and what is not right, and we tend to pass up on the ones which aren't. We do get offered them, unfortunately, and I know other dealers have fallen for them. It's a shame that they're out there, but this is a fact of life. As the values increase, so will people trying to fake these. And this is especially true of custom colour Fenders, mainly Stratocasters, because they're probably the easiest ones to fake, especially solid-bodied ones like Fiesta Red, Sonic Blue, which there seems to be loads of fakes out there. But again, as in our experience, they're relatively easy to identify, and it's a pain when we have to point this out to somebody who's brought us a guitar, expecting it to be worth 30 grand, and we have to say, well, sorry, you've got a fake here. And it's, for us, we can't even sell it. This has happened recently to us, and this has happened all over the last few years. I'd say it's increasing a bit, but they still haven't got to a point where you can't distinguish a real one. So, no, we're not stopping selling vintage Fenders at all. We're still happily selling them, and we're happily buying them and finding happy customers for them. I hope that answers your question. Next question we have is from JW Min Chu on Instagram. He asks, have any guitars surprised you with how much you like them? Okay, well, to answer your question, I remember when I first started buying and selling vintage guitars, I was probably one of the first guitars which really struck me about how amazing it is. Vintage 335s, vintage 345s, which is probably not the answer you were expecting, but I remember back in the late 80s, I think, picking up a 59 345, and I was just amazed. It played itself. It was absolutely beautiful to play. It sounded gorgeous. The neck was perfect, and it really, really did blow me away. Aside from that, I remember getting into 50s and 60s Telecasters when I was playing in bands, and I used to think tellies were for country and western players, that was it. But some of the bands I played tellies in, it was not the typical telly sound. I had a Mesa Boogie cranked up, and used to get lots of sustain from it, believe it or not, and it was great. I used to love tellies. So I guess 335s I was knocked out by the playability, the ease of it playing itself pretty much. Tellies, I was knocked out by the versatility of the sound, after only thinking it was for country and western people. And the maple neck in particular I thought was a fantastic feeling. More recently, I've got into Les Paul Juniors. I think they're still a fantastic guitar to play. They sound terrific. It's a combination of thick slap, mahogany board, and a screaming P90, which is so close to the strings. It's unbelievable. The combination of that gives it a fantastic hard sound, which is lovely. Okay, Stephen Summers from Instagram asks, I appreciate that there can be hits and misses in any given year, but do you think in general that vintage Fender and Gibson guitars were made to a higher standard and with better materials than their modern non-custom shop iterations? Okay, Stephen, that's a very good question, and to answer that, I think I can generally say that yes, they are, unfortunately. I think during the 50s and 60s, during the 50s and early 60s certainly, they were more selective with the woods which they used in production, and also the woods were more seasoned. They'd had more time to dry out, the demand wasn't quite the same as it is now, and they had the luxury of being able to hand-pick what they built their guitars out of. I'm not an expert on modern guitar building techniques, but I get the impression that the luxury of being able to hand-pick exotic woods which have been seasoned over many years is difficult to do in this day and age. So material-wise, I think they were made out of slightly better materials, and not just the actual materials, but the way the materials have been aged and seasoned, and basically so they're more ready to be built into a musical instrument that resonates. I hope that answers your question a bit. So, moving on, a question from Tom Clarkson on Instagram asks, how to find a good value 70s Strat? Well, that's probably quite tricky. They are going up in value, 70s Strats, the large headstock ones this is, the post-CBS era Strats, as most people like to call them. How to find a good value? It's like most Fenders. If you're looking for a good value Strat, Tele or whatever, you should look at refins. Refins are generally half the price of an original finish. Or you can look at one which has issues. You can look at one with changed pots, changed pickups, or change other bits of hardware. If that's, to me, is the only way I think you can pick up a reasonably priced Strat from any era, be it the 70s, 50s or 60s. So if you're looking for finding a good deal on a 70s Strat, then I would tend to look at guitars with those sort of issues. Okay, so we have another question from Stephen Summers from Instagram, who asks, it has been mentioned previously that there was an impact to the tone and feel of some instruments after some of the cost-saving measures made throughout the 60s and 70s. My question is, was there also an impact to the tone and feel, not necessarily negative, when the companies tried to make genuine improvements to the instrument's perceived flaws, most notably the paint, lacquer, chrome, etc.? Okay, Stephen, good question again. When CBS took over Fender in the mid-60s, it's generally perceived that the standard went downhill from that point. Now, there is a certain element of truth in that, and from my personal opinion, the sound did change from the late 60s onwards. The pickups used a different wire, and they used a different lead-out wire, and they sound a bit more brittle than the pickups from the early 60s, 50s, and the mid-60s. So something happened there, and I can only assume it was down to the pickups. Now, so far as the finish goes, I'm not convinced entirely that a thick polyester finish is going to necessarily make a guitar sound better which has had a thinner nitro finish. I think obviously with an acoustic, maybe even a semi, it will make a difference, but with a solid body electric, I'm not entirely sure. I think the difference is more down to feel and look of the instruments rather than anything else. And if there is a difference in tone between polyester and nitro finish guitars, it's probably not just down to the finish, because as I stated previously, it was an era when they changed the pickup formulations. They, for Telecasters as well, they changed the capacitor, and that affected the sound quite a lot. So paint finish on solid body guitars, I'm not convinced that that's going to make a huge difference, if any at all, but on acoustic and semi-acoustic it will. As far as chrome parts, nickel parts, again, I defy anyone, if we had an ABR1 bridge here on a Gibson, which was nickel plated, and we blind tested it with a ABR1 bridge which was chrome plated, I don't think anyone would tell any difference whatsoever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's a good video to do in the future. Who knows? We might consider that, but I got a feeling the end result will be no difference whatsoever. So a question here from Andrew Villalta, on Instagram. He asks, would you ever consider doing a charity day where we punters pay money to try certain guitars out? That, Andrew, is a very good and interesting question, and a point, actually. It's something we may consider doing for charity. However, if you consider yourself as a punter, then you're more than welcome to come down and try out any vintage guitar you like. You'd have to make an appointment first, because we are appointment only. But we welcome everyone and anyone. So as long as there's an interest in guitars, of course. So if you do have an interest in guitars, if you just want to see how a vintage guitar feels, plays and sounds, then we'd be more than happy to accommodate you. You just need to email us, call us, and we'll book you in the diary, and you can come down and try whatever you like out. As regards to Charity Day, that's quite good, actually. I like that idea. It's something we may do in future, so if we do, we'll announce it on our social media feeds. But thank you, very good question. Okay, thanks very much for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any comments, or if you have any other questions, then please write them in the comments section below, and I'll try and answer as many as I can. Alternatively, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and just comment there, and we'll collate them ready for the next Q&A session. If you like the video, then please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring a bell, and hopefully see you for the next one. Bye then.